So I'm playing with my daughters, and we're in bed, and they're about to go to sleep. And my phone comes on, and we turn it on, and they see a shadow. Okay. Now these are little girls. They're childlike. They're innocent. They don't really understand shadows. And we had turned the lights off, and so they see a shadow, and they go, "Dad, Dad, there was Dad, Dad," and it was like they were so excited. And so we started playing the games. Okay, if you've ever done this before, maybe doing like this, and it's really big on the wall, and it feels like it's coming at them, and they freak out and they get excited, and they said, "We want to do it, we want to do it," and I had told them that that was called a shadow. Okay. And then so afterwards, every single time that we're going to bed and it's like bedtime, it's like, "Daddy, shadows, Daddy, shadows." And it becomes the coolest thing in the world to them. And if you have children, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you've ever spent time with nieces, nephews, or you've run youth programs, or you've seen kids in motion, you understand what it means to be childlike. And today I wanted to talk a little bit about childlike versus childish, and not just teaching the differences, because already you're probably smart enough to assume that childlike has more of a positive connotation. Childish has a negative connotation. Nobody wants to be childish. But if we think about childlike, we always get excited. And if you think about how adults' voices change when they see children, and they go, "Oh my gosh!" and we raise our voices. Even the manliest of men, even the most alpha of alphas, tend to get soft when we're around children. And why is that? And we tend to tap into something that's like our childlike nature. And today I want to talk about some examples about how that could help you as an adult. You know, how that could help you in your spiritual life, how that could help you in your mental development, your mental toughness, or maybe it's your emotional intelligence, or even in the workplace or with your marriage. And kind of give some examples here about how to incorporate that into your everyday life, because there's power in being childlike. And Jesus demonstrated this, and the way that Jesus was when he was with children. And there's Bible verses about this, and we'll touch on that here in a moment. But my goal and my outcome with talking about this message is that people can tap into the power of what it's like to be childlike versus childish. I'll give you a couple examples. You ever think about, I was raised with Disney movies, and I'm talking about Disney movies of the past. Specifically, not to say that there isn't some good stuff that could be out there today, but I'm talking about the original movies. And you think about like Peter Pan, and Peter Pan had this amazing character. And you watch even the movie Hook. Robin Williams did a great job with it, where at one point of his time he was childlike and he was Peter Pan, but then he grew up. And when he grew up, he became more of a corporate person, logical, didn't use his imagination as much. Kids didn't really want to be around him, wasn't even a good dad, was a good businessman. But when he tapped into that childlike nature, that's how he rekindled the relationship with his family and with his son. And when he became better, when he tapped into that. And I think that all across the world, especially in America, we could tap into that imagination. Imagine having a feast. Have you ever hung out? And this is something else I do with my daughters, where we hang out and we act like we're eating. And they said, "Dad, are you hungry?" And then I say, "Yes, I'm really hungry." And then they set up their ice cream stand, they set up their hamburger stand, and they get behind it and they're feeding me. Now, here's the thing: when you study the mind of a child, and I'm not perfect in this area by any stretch of the imagination, but as I understand it, the level of understanding and the development of the brain hasn't yet developed to a point where it doesn't understand yet that they're not actually having ice cream and feeding you ice cream. And so my daughters, they're speaking both English and Spanish, and they say, "Do want this one or this one? Do want?" And "to want" is like, "What do you want?" And they're mixing English and Spanish in there, and I think it's adorable. But I always say, "Hmm." And here's the key: I become childlike, and my mannerisms and the pace at which I'm explaining things, I'm acting silly, but I'm not childish. I'm not immature. I'm getting into their world, okay? And I get into their world and I say, this one. And my voice changes and my mannerisms change, and it happens naturally. I don't have to think about it. And probably this has happened to you. And then they give it to me, and then I say, this was really good. You want some? And then they have some too. And we all are satisfied as if we had a meal or had ice cream or hamburgers or something like that. And Peter Pan demonstrates that as well, when they're all sitting at the table and they have Never Never Land and everything. And what they don't want to do is they don't want to grow up. Now, there's a famous book in the 80s that's called the Peter Pan Syndrome. And this is more of a real subject about how young men never really grow up. And biblically, we're called to be attached to our mothers in the beginning of our life, and then we're called to fall in love, get married, and move on from our mothers. And two becomes one when you get married, and your life changes and you evolve. But sometimes we're lacking that evolving, and sometimes that we're not growing up. And even though our age is growing up and our bodies may change and we may learn more things, we're not evolving or we're not becoming better. And I want to give some value here in this area. So let me highlight a couple words that would demonstrate like being childlike. Things like curiosity, wonder, like you're wondering about. You want to learn a subject with curiosity. Okay, you could do this whether you're 7 years old, or you could do this whether you're 70 years old. You have a wonder about the world, like you're curious to know more facts. You have an ability to trust. I was at a hotel lobby in Texas, and I met a gentleman about 55 years old, and he saw me working on something, and I was really working on something diligently, and I was having some coffee in a hotel, and he looked at me and he goes, "What are you reading? What are you working on?" Now, the way he said it is if he was genuinely curious as to why this person is so focused. By the way, there was a football game going on that everybody was watching, and I wasn't watching it. And I love football, but I wasn't into it this time. And I was really into the project that I was working on. And he kept looking over at me and he said, "What are you working on?" And he was genuinely curious, like a child, about finding out what I was working on. I told him a little bit about it, found out a little bit about him. I ended up putting my project down. We talked for about 45 minutes. And he said something in there. I said, "Man, I really genuinely appreciate the spirit by which you spoke to me. Like you spoke to me with a level of spirit that I wanted to put my work down to talk to you." And he said, "I wanted to talk to you because I saw something about you." And it was funny because we didn't even know each other, but it's as if we instantly had trust. And that trust, when you trust, especially if you trust a stranger, you subject yourself to potentially being hurt. And I think many people have allowed their past or damage, or maybe they've been damaged by the past, okay? But they haven't forgiven, or they haven't reconciled, or they haven't let their heart change from the way somebody else treated them or made them feel. And it hardens us sometimes. It makes us colder. And I believe that's when the devil is winning. And I believe that the devil is winning when he gets us to stop being childlike and being curious about the world or curious about the lives of other people, and where you're genuinely interested. And it's not like you're not trying to sell, you're not trying to get something from somebody. You're simply interested in what it is that's about them. And he was that about me. And then I became interested in him. And he told me stories about his 7-year-old and how his 7-year-old got the number 23 in his jersey. And if he's watching, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And how he felt a level of responsibility because it was Michael Jordan's number. And this gentleman grew up knowing Jordan's the GOAT. I grew up knowing Jordan's the GOAT. And it was cool because we had that connection. And we ended 45-minute conversation hugging, exchanging information. And I said, "Wow, there's something about you." He goes, "Let me tell you something about people from Texas. People from Texas trust. We have faith. We believe the best out of people." And he started describing really what I believe is some of the secrets that can unlock somebody that's successful. By the way, I found out at the end, he's very financially successful. He runs his own business. He's in financial services. He loves his kids. He loves his wife. And he obviously loved me, and we only knew each other for less than an hour. And I believe that unlocks something in us. It unlocks like kind of like when you work out and your endorphins are going, or you're releasing, or maybe you have your favorite drink, or you have your favorite food, and it releases dopamine, and there's like a chemical connection that we have that happens physically. But there's something that happens spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, all at the same time when we act childlike, and we need to improve and get better in this area. I think about the innocence and the openness of a child wanting to learn everything. And my girls are running around the house finding, like, "Oh, it's a spider," or, "Oh my gosh, there's a bug, a bug." And my little daughter Genesis just loses her mind if she sees a bug outside. And she's like, "Daddy, Daddy, you got to get it." And it's like this epic war that we need to go have, and we need to go get rid of a bug or something like that. So these are some of the traits that would define somebody that's childlike. Some of the ones that would be childish would include things like selfishness, immaturity, a lack of openness, like you don't really want to get into something, irresponsible, maybe even as far as saying like petulant. And maybe you've been some of these things. I've been many of these things many times in my life. And it shuts me down. When I've done that, it shuts me down. And I've noticed it in the lives of others. I've been able to, in the last 20 years, recruit over 40,000 people in my organization over the years, and learn a lot about people, and watching how they respond to different things. And I know that myself, when I self-reflect, I know the times when I've been closed off, closed-minded, irresponsible, not open to being childlike. And then I know the times when other people around me were the same way. And don't judge if you're around people that are struggling in this area right now. Maybe they just need some unlocking. Maybe they need some help with you, and I'll give you a couple steps on how to do that. And so we want to make sure that we're more that we demonstrate a level of humility, demonstrate a level of like teachability. I think about when I started with a spiritual mentor of mine, Stan. I love you, brother. I go to this lunch and my brother says, you need to meet this guy, and he could help you in this area. And I was open to having a spiritual mentor in my life at this stage. Okay. But it doesn't work. Having a spiritual mentor doesn't work if you're not open and you're childlike about learning the word. Because until you understand how much you need it, kind of like how a child knows they depend on their parents, even though they act independently, they still know that they need their parents for like mobilizing themselves, eating, getting anything they need their parents. Just like you as a Timothy in Christ need a Paul. And until you know that you need it, the word means nothing. It's not going to penetrate your mind. You're just going to see it like stories that were told long ago by people you didn't meet and the people that you don't know. And with stories that have no effect on you. But when you're open and you're childlike, good things could take place. I remember meeting Stan, and we got together, and he says, "Okay, get out your Bible." And I was like, I didn't bring my Bible with me. And he goes, "You didn't bring your Bible with you?" And he takes his, which is in a leather bound notebook, and he kind of throws it at me like, "Well, here, use mine." And he like throws his Bible at me. And he was slightly coaching, slightly dismissive, slightly checking me, because he obviously saw my confidence and somebody that needed to get kind of checked backwards a little bit. So I get checked backwards a little bit, and I remember thinking in my mind, why the heck didn't I bring a Bible if I'm going to this meeting? Like, first I felt dumb, okay, and sometimes that happens. But if I was not in a childlike position wanting to learn, I could take offense. Okay, I could be upset. I could be frustrated. I could want to run away. I could be resentful of the way that he did that. But because I was open and childlike, I was like, I told him, I said, listen, I know this relationship is new, but number one, I'm going to be the best student you've ever had. Number two, I'm always going to bring my Bible moving forward. Number three, I can't wait for the next lesson that I learn, because I'm curious and I want to know how to be as confident. And one day I want to be in your chair teaching other people about the word, because I think it's so important and how much it's changed my life. I'll share you a couple Bible verses here in just a moment. And so I'm thinking about back when I was in college, another story about being childlike. I volunteered to do a program in Los Angeles inner city, specifically in the Compton area in South Central, Watts, Compton. These are areas in Southern California that have been hit hard, at least at that time. Probably still today. They struggled with gangs and drugs and violence and things like that. And I was running a program. I was about 18, 19, and I was a volunteer in it. And one of the things that we did was we taught 12-year-old boys, 11, 12, 13-year-old boys, junior high, about sex, drugs, alcohol, and the things that they were probably experiencing, seeing their older brothers and cousins and uncles expose them way too early to. And in some communities, you're going to learn about bad things, but it happens a little bit later if you've been a little bit more sheltered, a little bit more protected. But today, especially with technology and phones, young people are subject to more information that's damaging to their innocence than ever before. It's hard to protect the kids when they could go see everything on the internet. And so back then, there was no internet. This was the early 2000s. And it was really cool because I got a chance to take these kids, and they signed waivers where we took them bowling and we took them out to eat and we took them to go do things that obviously other people in their life, most of them didn't have fathers in the household present in their life, just like I didn't. And many of them had older brothers that were maybe probably related to gang activity or doing wrong things, and they weren't around their younger brothers, which is why they were part of this program. So anyways, I got an opportunity to take a young child, a young boy, and to class with me at USC. And USC, University of Southern California, is a wealthy private school in Southern California. And he had obviously never been to a college. I never went to a college until I was 17 years old in my life. When I was visiting universities as a senior in high school, I'd never even stepped foot on a campus. I didn't even know what colleges look like. I just saw college football on TV. And I love college football, but I'd never gone to one. And I remember being 17. I was childlike when I was looking at schools. I couldn't even imagine a 12-year-old who's not even thinking about college going to school, but he walked around and he spent the entire day with me. And I took him to all my classes. And I don't even know how that was approved or authorized or whatever. And it was one of the best days of my life. And although I never got a chance to see that young man again, if you're watching this, contact me. If you remember this, it's one of the best days of my life because I'll never forget him looking around in his little polo shirt, and he would look around and he was like, and people would ride their bikes really fast by, and then we would go to eat, and he would be like a crowded cafe, and then we'd sit in class, and he'd see this classroom that was enormous, and it had hundreds of kids in the class, and he was like, the whole day he was just so like dreaming. And I remember what a responsibility that was. And that's part of the message today, how much of a responsibility it is for us to be childlike and to allow these experiences into the next generation so that we could give back to the world and we could raise up a generation of leaders. I believe that that day was one of the days that could get that child one step closer to being a leader in his life, to being a leader for life. I'm excited about that because he was dreaming, he was in his imagination, and it wasn't just about shadows on the wall with my daughters, or it wasn't even about ice cream that we're fake eating or something like that. It wasn't about that. It was about him unlocking and seeing things and being curious and wondering, can I one day come here? And he asked me, whoa, what is this for? And I repeatedly said throughout the day, we're doing this today so that you know that you can be here one day. This is a story for you. This is an example for you. I'm excited for you. And he said, me? Here? Like he was curious, like, really? Me? And I was like, 100%. This is why we're doing this. I didn't get a chance to see a university till I was 17 years old when I was logically looking for one. You're 12 years old, you're not even thinking about university, but you get a chance to walk around and experience things that you wouldn't otherwise experience, which makes it so important. And throughout our content, throughout these lessons that we're going to be talking about in this channel that we're running, we're always going to be looking for ways, stories, and ways to implement leadership, imagination, excitement, being childlike in the lives of others. When I think about the movie Dumb and Dumber, I know it's maybe a terrible reference following a great story about a young man who I want nothing but the best for, and I pray for him daily. I hope I get a chance to meet him one day. But in Dumb and Dumber, it's one of the funniest movies in the 90s of all time. You either love that movie or you think the humor is ridiculous and it's terrible. And if you think it's ridiculous and terrible, I don't even know how we could be friends. I wouldn't even know how we could be associate with each other because I'm such a fan of that type of humor. And the entire movie, although you may call them dumb, really what they were doing is they were being childlike and they were innocent and everything that they did and all the jokes. And I could do an entire lesson just on that. And I'm not going to go down that path. When I do a video about funny movies, I'll do that one and I'll give you some of my funniest stories. But I believe as grown adults, they were childlike the entire time. Think about Steven Spielberg making movies like The Goonies, and these opportunities where young kids could go on a treasure hunt and they're excited. And why am I sharing all this stuff with you? Because in order for me to grow spiritually, I need to be childlike in the Word. Okay. In order for me to grow in my marriage, I need to be childlike in learning about my wife and having fun and playing with my wife. We went to Breckenridge, Colorado, and we had an entire play date. We did a 3-day event with our teammates, and it was one of the best weekends. And this was starting going into 2024. So it was December of 2023. And we did a conference. We rented a 10-bedroom mansion. It was an awesome thing. We did like a boot camp together, and we spent time together. But when everybody left, my wife and I played skee ball in an arcade. Okay, we played Street Fighter. We're doing all these different things in an arcade. We're walking around. We're having hot cocoa. We're playing in the snow. We're making snowballs and we're throwing it at each other. And we're literally acting like children falling in love. Okay, like we're a young couple, even though we've been together for several years now. And it was one of the best days of our marriage, of our life. We sat in a photo booth and we were doing faces and playing around. And marriages need this, okay? Corporate executives, we need this stuff. We're professional. We run businesses. I get it. We don't want to be immature, but we need to be childlike. I'll give you a couple steps on how to get here. Number one, stay curious and silly. Play jokes. Have fun. Make funny references. Watch funny movies. Even in the workplace setting, it doesn't mean be immature, okay? But it does mean to stay silly and to stay having fun and to smile. Smile big. It's hard to be upset when you're smiling. It's hard to be upset when you're smiling. You got to make sure that we smile big. Number two, play freely, even if you're by yourself. I know that sounds maybe weird. It's better when you're around other people. And the older you are, the more people are going to go, what the heck are you doing over there? But whatever it is, I don't care if you're playing with figurines. I don't care if you're playing with toys. I don't care if you're playing with something, but whatever you play, play freely. Play freely. Don't be locked up. Don't be too rigid. I've been rigid many times in my life and it did not serve me, okay? Number three, be mindful of others. Be mindful of others and present. The word awareness really escaped me for much of my life. I was either thinking about the past, which I was worried about, okay, which causes guilt, shame, and that type of stuff, or I was worried about the future, and that's anxieties. That causes you a lot of anxieties. But if you're present in the moment, one of the things when you watch Michael Jordan's The Last Dance, one of the best parts of Michael Jordan's Last Dance documentary, it's I forgot if it was number 4 or 5. There's 10 episodes, 4 or 5. I forgot which one it was, but they said Michael Jordan was a great basketball player. Michael Jordan was a great athlete. Michael Jordan was amazing at all those things. But the number one thing that separated Michael, and I completely agree, was that no matter when, no matter where, no matter who he was around, he was present. He was present in the lives of other people. He was present with the kids watching him. He was present with the security guards that he was messing around while they were protecting him. He was present with his teammates. He was present on the court. He was present with everybody he was around. He was present. And that's something that I've tried to emulate in the last several years. It's very difficult to do, but if you're aware, you could be present. Number 4, grow up. Spiritually grow up. I'm going to give you a couple items right here, a couple Bible verses that'll really help you out in this regard. Let me give it to you here. Key verses. I'm going to give you 3 verses. I'm going to read these to you, okay? In 1 Corinthians 14:20, okay? It said, brothers, stop thinking like children. In regard to evil, be infants, but in your thinking, be mature. Okay, so in regard to evil, be infants, meaning know that you need your father, know that you need Jesus, okay, in that process, just like a child that's scared. So in regard to evil, be infants, all right, but in your thinking, be mature. We call this the mind of Christ, to have a maturity with your mental side, okay, that's 1 Corinthians, all right. Also in 1 Corinthians 13:11, it says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. Not childlike, childish. So the Bible also calls us to put away childish things, being immature, being selfish, being petulant, putting those things away because as a child we did those things, but when we grow up, we no longer do those things. If you see the way people respond to people on social media, you see the level of immaturity that you see in public, you see the lack of public, like when you see public discourse and the way people disagree with one another, they don't even know how to disagree with one another anymore. We need to improve here. But my favorite one is in Matthew 18:3. It says, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So on one side, it's the Bible is telling you, make sure to not act like a child, childish. But it's also saying, unless you become childlike, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. And the reason is because we will not demonstrate a level of curiosity to the degree that we will want to know more about heaven. And if we're not curious, we're never going to learn God's word. And so let's wrap up here today. Number 5, okay? Number 5, be kind and compassionate. Be kind and compassionate. I went to Starbucks. I go there regularly, and I was at Starbucks and I was making an order. And I remember the lady behind the counter. She had told me that she had a daughter, and it was in quick passing, but I remembered, and I want to show that I listened the last time I was there. And I said, "How's your daughter?" And immediately her body language completely changed, and it didn't change for the positive. I was very confused. In my mind, I was like, "Didn't she have a daughter? Why would she respond negatively when I asked that? What's going on?" Like, I felt this weird spirit just kind of come in. And then she goes, she was very flustered, and she was very like this, and I was like, I'm sorry. I thought last time you told me that you had a daughter. I was just asking. She goes, no, you don't understand. And then she came back to me. So I got my drink, and then she came back over to the counter, and she goes, listen to my wife and I. She goes, yesterday my daughter was in a car accident, and she's okay, but something happened in the car, and there was a small explosion or something where she got really scared. And she goes, I'm still a little rattled by it. And you had asked me about it. And I apologized because you wouldn't have known, but something happened. And in the moment, there's a time to be very compassionate. And I remember stopping and even praying with her and saying, like, listen, let's pray for your daughter. And let's be right here in the moment, because even though she's okay physically right now, you're obviously rattled, you're nervous, you're scared. And I brought up something, and I had to be aware and present in that moment to respond to her and to meet her with a level of compassion, so that it wasn't just like, oh, okay, or I take offense to the way she responded to me, because initially she really put me off, but I knew that there was something that was there. Maybe earlier in my life I would be like, geez, what's wrong with you? Why did you respond like this? And so if you're driving on the road and somebody cuts you off, it was still wrong of them for cutting you off. But maybe they're speeding to the hospital because they have a sick kid in the back and they need to get to the hospital, and they made a mistake on their way there. That might be something that's true. Maybe somebody responds to you in public in a negative way and it hurts your feelings. And you're like, why'd you speak to me that way? But maybe they just found out something was bad with their mom or their dad. And so I started humanizing people a lot more over the last few years, and realizing that most of the time when people mistreat somebody else, they're not even thinking about the way that they're treating that person. They're just in their own feelings and in their own head, and they did something wrong. And two things can be true at the same time. It's still wrong what they do or say, but maybe they just need somebody to meet them where they are, show them a level of compassion, forgive them for the way that they spoke, and then maybe you even find out afterwards what really happened, and it would all make sense. And so these are all things that could help you in many different areas, and I hope that you really take this, and I hope that you really start understanding people a little bit more, and you have more fun in your life. Not being immature, but being childlike. Still showing maturity, but at the same time, still being silly at the same time. And if you do that, I think you could be a great leader. I think you could be a great husband or wife. I think you could follow Jesus properly. I think you could help other people in the workplace, and we can make this country and the world a better place. If somebody needs to hear this, go ahead and share it with them. If you know that they're childlike, send it to them and say, hey, this reminds me of you. And I just wanted to thank you for being that way in my life. And if you think somebody's not childlike or needs to work in this area, send this to them, and it may unlock something that could change their life forever and maybe ultimately yours. I hope you take care, God bless, and I hope you choose to be a leader for life.